Some people just can't handle change.
Why do you keep doing that? Who are you talking to? There's no one there!
You're tuning in to the J Blast Network. Oh yeah, welcome to the next level. Welcome back, guys, to another retro discussion. I know it's been a long time, but I'm back at it and I got more to go. So let's talk about this topic, which is why do games have to change? So if you played some of your favorite franchises, you may have noticed that over time, the gameplay, the story, or certain mechanics have changed in those games. Maybe they changed genres. Maybe they have changed gameplay styles. Maybe they even changed characters. But the question that some people always have is why. There's always old guard of people who want that same experience they had before, and they're just like, why did it change? This isn't better than what I had before. I want this back. And I know this seems like a simple answer to people, but to be honest, I feel like a lot of people don't understand why these things happen. So I guess I can discuss on why this actually happens. And the reason why is simple. You just can't have something that's very long running be the same thing over and over again. And it's not just about being something that is, being the same and people don't want the same thing over and over again. That is a factor to it, but there's something more important to that. You see, let's talk about Crash Bandicoot for a minute. All right, Crash Bandicoot's gameplay, the best gameplay that people say is the best, is the trilogy gameplay. These linear levels where you're running down a linear path and you have to dodge a bunch of obstacles and it's hard as hell, right? So the first 4 games of Crash followed this method, and the 2D GBA games kind of followed this method too. But once Twinsanity went around, which is an awesome game by the way, it's one of my favorites, it changed the gameplay. It made it more open world and then added things. Some people liked it, some people didn't. But why did it have to change? Especially now when a game like Crash 4 can come out and people love it and it's like that old style except enhanced and modernized. And I think the simple answer is just that they have to sort of modernize these games or change these games. Now Crash wasn't an original franchise that was in 2D translating to 3D, so it didn't have that problem of having to be something that needed to have that transition change and wondering how they would work in 3D. It was already a 3D title, but it was like, what can we do from here, right? What can we change, honestly? And I think that was the big thing they wanted to change, was to make it open world or adapt it and add some beat 'em up mechanics, even though it didn't always work out. I think those were the main things that they were looking at to change the gameplay up, because at the time when Raptor Cortex came out, now granted they seem to have messed it up to some people. I personally like Raptor Cortex. It was a pretty good game. I don't see the hate in my personal opinion, but they didn't succeed with that gameplay style. And I think part of it was because people just didn't like some of the changes in Raptor Cortex, but it was also because people just expected better or wanted something new for that gameplay style. And it's because of that Crash ended up changing to, well, which Twinsanity was, or what Mind of a Mutant was, or Crash of the Titans, stuff like that, right? It just ended up changing to that. Now, is change always a bad thing? No. Is it always a good thing? No, but when done right, it can be a great thing, and it does create its own sort of fan bases for them. I guess the biggest examples that a lot of people are thinking of now are Sonic and Mega Man. With the classic Sonic games, they were great, but when 3D came around, they had to change. They released like Sonic Mania, for instance. Now, honestly, if Sonic Mania came out back then it would have new levels. But if they released it on the Sega Saturn, I mean, Sonic would be ripped apart, man. Like, it wouldn't even be a competition because people wanted a 3D game, and some people are like, why not just stick to 2D? And they might bring up Mega Man's case, where Mega Man had Mega Man X, and X took 2D, and the classic series in 2D. But what they forget to mention is that at the same time, you had Mega Man Legends, which not only was changing from being a platformer, was turning into an RPG. Now that game didn't do so hot in sales-wise, but again, they did make a 3D Mega Man to match the current standards of that generation. And the same goes for Sonic. It just took them a longer time to do. And Sonic Adventure has created a lot of fans. Many fans, man. And every Sonic game releasing now is changing something that's created its own fan base. But much like Mega Man, who also has separate titles that have their own fan bases. The only difference is that, Classic has its own thing, and X is its own thing, and Battle Network's its own thing, and Legend is its own thing. You kind of get the point from there. Mega Man separated it out into different series, so people are latching onto those different series, whereas Sonic is still staying Sonic, no matter what. And I think that's what kind of causes the divide, is that people see that and they expect a certain thing. So they may get mad when the game's an RPG. They may get mad when the game is Sonic's in the car, or Sonic's on a hoverboard or something like that, and not running in the 2D style. I've seen it so many times because they just want that old gameplay back. And to those people, I just think you gotta understand that stuff is bound to change. The thing is, it just has to be a good change. Sometimes the changes aren't that good and you gotta go back. But why is it now, you may ask, that certain games are going back to their old style or trying to replicate those styles? Part of it is nostalgia, and part of it is just that now is a good time to go back to that style. I mean, if you're waiting like 20 years for a 20-year-long franchise to go back to the original style, I think at that point, people are more welcoming to it, because we haven't had this in a long time. We want it again, they want to see it again, it'd be nice to have it again. But if you're just going to keep doing it over and over and over and over and over and over again, it just doesn't work, and it's just going to kill your franchise. A lot of franchises just have to change to sort of adapt to the modern world. Another great example is God of War. Now, I personally don't really care for the change that happened with God of War, mostly because of the gameplay. That's really what it is. But it is changing in the world where the old God of War just would be shunned and not looked so fondly upon. Back in the day, God of War could release and have all that crazy stuff and that crazy gameplay, and people would eat it up and love it. But nowadays, I think having that sex mini game alone is really going to turn a lot of people off of God of War and get it written off as some dude bro fantasy, as people like to say. And it's because of that the new God of War was made in this different style, that it appealed to a broader audience and got a bunch of new fans, and of course it splits the old fan base. But I do appreciate and respect Santa Monica Studios for choosing to go with an idea like that and sticking to it, and not being like, okay, we got to do this for the old fans. I mean, there's stuff there, but we got to do this for the old fans. They stuck to their idea and they stuck with it. And I can appreciate that more than people trying to make games that appeals to everybody. Sonic Frontiers is a big topic right now, which I'm planning on making a video on, just talking about how awesome it is. But some people are upset that it's not the regular boost gameplay or the regular linear Sonic gameplay. But over the years, it's addressing things that people have asked or said things that are bad about the Sonic games, like the games being too short. They wanted bigger worlds, level design not being up to snuff. And that game seems to be fixing a lot of that, but it's in a new style, and people are sort of worried that from all the old style, because they're like, why is it that it's not this style or that style? And I think it's just because whenever they try to do that and they combine it, you end up getting something like bad, like Sonic Forces, because they don't go in on it well. They never go in on it well. And I just think you have to separate that and say, hey, I want to make this game for this. And even if people get mad at that idea, they get mad that this stuff has changed, at least you know that you went hard on that one idea, and you don't have to worry about anybody really saying that, oh, this it didn't go hard on it, because you went hard on that idea, you made a game around it, and you stuck to it. And that's going to get more people on your side, more people liking your game and new fans, than you trying to stick to multiple ideas just because they're trying to please the audience. Because the thing is, this audience wants that idea. They don't want the other idea in their game. They just want that one gameplay style that they wanted in their game and nothing else, right? So you can't try to mix those audiences together. It's gonna piss people off. It's gonna make people not want to buy your game. A few people, but like what, 15% or 10% of people not buying your game is better than all of them being mad that your game is trying to pander to everybody. With that being said, what about games like Mario or games like Pokemon, which you may think don't really change much throughout the years, but in reality, they have. You see, of course, Mario was 2D, and Mario was a goal-based platform. You reach the goal of the stage, collect some coins or whatever, right? And then Mario 64 came along, and it's not about the goals anymore, about collecting stars. It was mostly about running around this open world. It was a huge gameplay change. And from then on, almost every 3D Mario even though it has a similar style to it, maybe it's, collecting, going to a level, collecting the stars, exploring an open style level, even though it has that aspect to it, things have changed. You don't play Mario 64 and then go to Mario Sunshine and be like, this is the same game, because it's not. Not just because it's a different name or a different environment, but because the gameplay is so different with just the addition of FLUDD. Nintendo likes to add this gimmick to the game and expand upon it so much that it becomes its own thing, and that gameplay is unique to that game. You don't get what you want from Sunshine out of Galaxy, or 64 or 3D Land. And even those games have changed. The Galaxy took out a lot of the openness. It's more linear than the other platformers, and it's more gravity based, but it's cool on its own, right? And then that sort of led into 3D Land, and 3D World was tried to take the 2D style levels with goals and just the level design in that and try to mix it with 3D and made the gameplay like it is there, which in turn took out a lot of the movement options that the older 3D games had, which in turn took out the open levels that the other 3D games had, which in turn made its own 3D style for Mario, which in turn kind of separated that 3D style from the other 3D style. But I think the reason why Mario doesn't get a lot of flack for it is because it still is what it is, a 3D platformer. The basics are always there. The fundamentals are always there for a 3D Mario game, to where people aren't really freaking out when something like that changes. At least not that much. Some people prefer that style, some people don't, but it's not something that people are going to really, I guess, fight over. At least I haven't really seen any of that. Now, Pokemon is one that people fight over all the time. You guys know that if you're a Pokemon fan, how stuff has changed, how stuff has sort of modernized when it comes to the games. The same, combat styles, they haven't changed that much from the combat, except for adding like a new type of move or a new gimmick or anything like that. But overall, the exploration, how you catch Pokemon, the worlds, the story, the progression has changed a lot as Pokemon went on. Some of it good, some of it bad. They took out gyms in Sun and Moon because people were complaining that the gym system was so old and people were tired of it. And they've honestly been trying to kind of fix the gym system or change the gym system because they don't want the same system over and over again. Do all 8 gyms, fight an evil team, victory road, that's your game. They don't want to keep doing that over and over again, so they try to change it. Sometimes it's not that great, sometimes it is that great. Scarlet and Violet is looking like it's going to be really good what it's doing. But they wanted to change it because after so long, it just gets tired on people, right? And another example to that would be like the Mega Man series, the classic Mega Man series. Although looking back on it, a lot of people do like Mega Man 4 more than 2, or Mega Man 6 more than 2, or something like that. The thing is, when you were back there back in the day, and you were playing Mega Man 1, you had Mega Man 2, and Mega Man 3, and after 3 you had 4, 5, and 6, which were in a very similar style. It got boring. It got tiring of seeing that style over and over again. And people have said it. I've seen videos where people have said, they're just like, yeah, these games are fun, but like I'm so tired of the same. I was so tired of the same formula, and Mega Man 2 felt so fresh when it came out. And that's why people would say that back in the day. There's a difference how people who played Mega Man back in the day and people who play Mega Man now feel about the games. And I think it's just because, they just it got oversaturated, right? And they almost had that with X. They almost had that with X, the X series. Now, X3 has some other problems to it. But if it was, if I feel like that was going to fall into that fatigue too of trying to be like X1. And that's why X4 kind of changed it up. It's similar gameplay, but it changed up so much stuff in X4 that it made it feel like a whole new gameplay style. And I think that's pretty cool. So as you can see, change isn't really always a bad thing. I honestly prefer change. I don't want games to stay the same. I feel like the games that have stayed the same or couldn't evolve much are the ones that have died over time. Insomniac Games moved over to Ratchet and Clank because they just couldn't figure out what to do with Spyro after Spyro 3. And if you think about it, they really couldn't figure out what to do with Spyro after Spyro 2 because they added multiple playable characters and kept Spyro's moveset essentially the same after that. And that game's good, but you see how easy it is to run out of ideas, and a lot of those older franchises that were there back then that are really cool, they don't come back for a reason because maybe they just don't know how to expand or add something into the game that modernizes it. And yeah, it can come back now, like 20 years later or 10 years later, when everyone's like wanting the same gameplay again. But like, you got to think about this: what is the future of that franchise? You're just gonna get a new game every 10 years and it's the same style, or are we gonna find a way to keep this franchise alive by making new titles and finding ways to innovate and change things so people will feel a difference in their games and it won't just be a stagnant franchise? People always get on COD for being the same too, but COD ended up changing and people got pissed off, and then COD changed back even though it was still different, and then people got pissed off at that. So sometimes you just don't know. If you want your franchise to go on for 20 plus years, you gotta do something different, even if that means changing up the genre sometimes, like Final Fantasy, changing from an RPG to or JRPG to an action RPG. That was a big one. Or Dragon Quest. Even now, Dragon Quest is maybe becoming an action RPG in Dragon Quest 12. That's apparently from what we're hearing. So who knows? Things have to change. Hey, we change as we grow, don't we? It is what it is. With that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this retro discussion. Let me know some topics you guys want me to cover down below. I'm trying to make these a weekly thing that I do. So just let me know what you want to see, what you want covered, and I'll try to cover it and talk about it. Maybe have somebody on to talk about it, because this is the discussion. My friend pointed out there was a discussion, but there's no one else talking but me most of the time. So, I think it's interesting to have people on. Let me know what you guys think. See you in the next video. That being said, this is the J Blast Network signing out. And don't forget, you better believe.
Still some humans who haven't been affected yet. Here, try this!
Hey, you! Out of the way!
You're supposed to be frightened.